Welcome to Books in the Freezer, a podcast dedicated to the deliciously disturbing world of horror fiction. I'm your host, Stephanie, and it's officially 2025. So you know what that means. That's right, baby. We are talking the most anticipated horror book releases of 2025. The first half, anyway. This is January to June. And let me tell you, there is a lot. It's really looking like it's going to be another stellar year for horror, which is exciting, obviously, as a horror fan. And I will talk about the books in just one moment. But I wanted to remind you that it's January and it's a perfect time to join in on the Books in the Freezer 2025 reading challenge. It's what the cool people are doing. That's what I've heard. I just don't want you to feel left out. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to leave a link to the Storygraph reading challenge in the podcast description so you can check it out for yourself. There's a couple hundred people joining in already, and I just don't want you to miss out on all the fun, like everything that we're doing together. Like this year, we're reading new releases. We're reading small town horror. We're reading horror nonfiction. And again, I just don't want you to feel left out. So I will leave that information so you can join in on the fun. And a reminder that Books in the Freezer is an independently produced one-person show. So if you would like to show your support, there are many ways to do that on the show notes, including affiliate links and a Patreon. And of course, support does not have to be monetary. There are a lot of ways to show your support without spending any money, including spreading the word, sharing about the podcast on social media, and leaving a review on a site like Apple Podcasts or Spotify. It raises visibility. It helps people find the show. It is really a huge help. If you have not done that already, please do. Anyway, enough chit chat. We know why you're here. Let's talk about books. Starting it off with January releases. Obviously, looking at this list, I am now realizing that these are not chronological. I don't know, maybe part of me felt like that would have just made too much sense. So apologies on that end, but they are separated by month, just not chronologically within the month. You know what I mean? Anyway, we've got a lot of exciting stuff to talk about. So let's get right into it with Grady Hendrix's Witchcraft for Wayward Girls. 15-year-old Fern arrives at the home in the sweltering summer of 1970, pregnant, terrified, and alone. Under the watchful eye of the stern Miss Wellwood, she meets a dozen other girls in the same predicament. There's Rose, a hippie who insists she's going to find a way to keep her baby and escape to a commune, and Zinnia, a budding musician who plans to marry her baby's father, and Holly, a wisp of a girl, barely 14, mute, and pregnant by no one knows who. Everything the girls eat, every moment of their waking day, and everything they're allowed to talk about is strictly controlled by adults who claim they know what's best for them. Then Fern meets a librarian who gives her an occult book about witchcraft, and power is in the hand of the girls for the first time in their lives. But power can destroy as easily as it creates, and it's never given freely. There's always a price to be paid, and it's usually paid in blood. So this is one I have actually already read, and maybe there is already a conversation recorded with Mr. Grady Hendrix himself about this book, but who's to say? The period piece elements of this story work very well. You can tell that he took a lot of time and effort researching. I love it as a coming of age and coming of rage story. I think most people are aware of my undying love for Grady Hendrix's book, My Best Friend's Exorcism, which I think is memorable and holds its place as people's favorite because of the empathy and understanding towards its teenage protagonists. And that empathy and love and care shines through in this book. So that is Witchcraft for Wayward Girls by Grady Hendrix. That will be coming out January 25th from Berkeley. And on the 7th, we have Wake Up, Open Your Eyes by McLeod Chapman. Noah Fairchild has been losing his formally polite Southern parents to far-right cable news for years. So when his mother leaves him a voicemail warning that the Great Reawakening is here, he assumes it's related to one of the many conspiracy theories she believes in. But when his own phone calls go unanswered, Noah makes the long drive from Brooklyn to Richmond, Virginia. There he discovers his childhood home in shambles, a fridge full of spoiled food, and his parents locked in a terrifying trance-like state in front of the TV. Panicked, Noah attempts to snap them out of it and get medical help. Then, Noah's mother brutally attacks him. But Noah isn't the only person to be attacked by a loved one. Families across the country are tearing each other apart, literally, as people succumb to a form of possession that gets worse the more time they spend watching particular channels, using certain apps, or visiting certain websites. In Noah's Richmond-based family, only he and his young nephew Marcus are unaffected. Together, they must race back to the safe haven of Brooklyn. But can they make it before they fall prey to the violent hordes? I have been interested in reading this since Clay posted a picture of the stack of books that he used for researching this novel, and they just seemed like a lot of fascinating titles on the history of possession. I did not read this in November because I was too stressed out, and I thought that maybe future me would be in a better place to read it. That was very adorable and naive of November Stephanie. I also think that in the hands of a less adept author, this could be quite hokey and on the nose. But I trust McLeod Chapman. I love the way he writes. He has heart really at the core of everything he puts out, but also isn't afraid to go there with the horror, which is always a great mix, personally. So that is, I really feel like the title should be whispered, right? It should be like, Wake Up, Open Your Eyes by McLeod Chapman, coming out January 7th from Cork. Moving on to At Dark, I Become Loathsome by LaRocca. If you're reading this, you've likely thought that the world would be a better place without you. A single line of text, glowing in the darkness of the internet, written by Ashley Lutton, who has often thought the same, and worse, in the years since his wife died and his young son disappeared. But the peace of the grave is not for him. It's for those he can help. Ashley has constructed a peculiar ritual for those whose desire to die is at war for their yearning to live a better life. Struggling to overcome his own endless grief, one night, Ashley finds connection with Jinx, a potential candidate for Ashley's next ritual, who spins a tale both revolting and fascinating. Thus begins a relationship that traps the two men in an ever-tightening spiral of painful revelations, where long-hidden secrets are dragged, kicking and screaming, into the light. Only through pain can we find healing. Only through death can we find new life. Everything about this sounds incredible. I am here for this. I love a toxic relationship. You know, like why make each other better when we always have the option to make each other worse? Come on. And as someone who came to LaRocca's work through Things Have Gotten Worse Since We Last Spoke, I sense some similar vibes here, and that excites me. This is At Dark, I Become Loathsome. That will be coming out January 28th from Blackstone. Moving on to The Lamb by Lucy Rose. Margot and Mama have lived by the forest since Margot can remember. When Margot is not at school, they spend quiet days together in their cottage, waiting for strangers to knock on their door. Strays, Mama calls them. Mama loves the strays. She feeds them wine, keeps them warm, then she satisfies their burning appetite by picking apart their bodies. But Mama's want is stronger than her hunger sometimes, and when a white-toothed stray named Eden turns up in the heart of a snowstorm, little Margot must confront the shifting dynamics of her family, untangle her own desires, and make her own bid for freedom. Finally throw in a bone, or a man steak, for the cannibalism girlies on this one. I love it. The cover, perfection. And January seems like a perfect time to read about a snowstorm and a very interesting mother-daughter dynamic. So very much looking forward to this one. That is The Lamb by Lucy Rose. That'll be coming out January 30th. And ending our January with Our Winter Monster by Dennis Mahoney. For the last year, Holly and Brian have been out of sync. Neither can forget what happened that one winter evening. Neither can forgive what's happened since. Tonight, Holly and Brian race toward Pinebuck, New York, trying to outrun a blizzard on their way to the ski village getaway they hope will save their relationship. But soon they lose control of the car. And then of themselves. Now, Sheriff Kendra Book is getting calls about a couple in trouble, along with reports of a brutal, mysterious creature rampaging through town, leaving a trail of crushed cars, wrecked buildings, and mangled bodies in the snow. To Kendra, who just lost another couple to the snow just 7 weeks ago, the danger feels personal. But not as personal as it feels to Holly and Brian, who are starting to see the past, the present, and themselves in a new monstrous light. I finished reading this a few weeks ago and I had a good time with it. I think the thing about fiction, especially fiction about couples having relationship issues, I feel like it satiates my intense need for like my nosiness in general. I want to know why you're having problems. What happened? What happened that one winter evening that has driven a wedge between you, Holly and Brian? I want to know. What is going on with this monster? I want to know. Like I said, I liked this. It reminded me of Werewolves Within, if you've seen that. I feel like vibe-wise, maybe less comedy. Werewolves Within was a little more funny, but the vibes. You get what I'm saying? So that is Our Winter Monster by Dennis Mahoney. That is coming out when? January 28th from Soho Press is when. All right, let's get into February releases. Starting off with The Poorly Made and Other Things, a story collection by Sam Rebelein. This will be coming out February 11th from HarperCollins. There's something wrong in Renfield County. It's in the water, the soil, the wood. But worst of all, it's in the minds of the residents, slowly driving them mad. When Lawrence Renfield massacred his family and drew the giant in his farmhouse with their blood, no one imagined the repercussions. At the very least, the blood-stained wood should have been set aflame, not chopped down and repurposed as furniture, decor, and heirlooms across the country. But that's exactly what happened. Now, regular people, like you and me, are sitting on and eating with, admiring the cursed wood, and reaping the consequences. These are their stories. I have been seeing a lot of love and hype for this collection, and I think it's understandable. I thought Edenville was a ton of fun. I love when authors create fictional towns and play in that town, and I love the idea of a short story collection set in this cursed town, and specifically the repercussions of this cursed wood. It just sounds really creative and really fun. So that is The Poorly Made and Other Things by Sam Rebelein. Like I said, that will be coming out February 11th. Next up, we have Hot Singles in Your Area by Jordan Shively. This will be coming out February 4th. Noah has just started working at Printed Matter, a media powerhouse that makes newspaper ads and asks for no prior experience. Malakia works for The Congregation, and when she wakes up one morning, everyone in the City of Silence has disappeared. Unknowingly, They both embark on quests that will bring them together in a hidden world controlled by a malevolent media powerhouse, encountering magic typewriters, screaming forests, and queer romances along the way. This sounds so interesting, but I will say it's the cover that first caught my eye when it comes to this book. It's bright green, and it's what looks like a can of sardines, and it's partially opened, and it's just eyeballs inside. Like, come on. It also says this is a big body horror book about two characters in parallel universes, which sounds fascinating, aside from everything that we learned in the synopsis. So very interested in that. That is hot singles in your area. That is coming out February 4th from Unbound. Next up, we have Beta Vulgaris by Margie Sarsfield. This will be coming out February 11th. When Elise and her boyfriend Tom set off from Minnesota, all she knows about harvesting sugar beets, Beta Vulgaris, is that her paycheck will cover a few months' rent on their Brooklyn apartment. She'll try anything to escape the incessant debt collection calls and chronic anxieties about her body and relationship. But as the grueling graveyard shift sets in, Elise notices strange things. Threatening texts, a mysterious rash, a string of disappearances from the workers' campsite, and snatches of a hypnotic voice coming from the beet pile itself. As crew members vanish, Elise obsesses over Tom's closeness with their charismatic co-worker C and falls back on self-destructive patterns of disordered eating and dissociation. Against the horrors of her uncertain future, is the siren song of the beet pile almost appealing? As you can imagine, I am fighting the millennial urge to make a Dwight Schrute reference, and the urge has won, obviously. Jokes aside, this sounds fascinating. I love a descent into madness type story, which sounds like what's going on here. And I'm very interested in this. Another striking cover. It's like hot pink, and the woman's face on the cover has beads over her eyes, which I really like. So that is Beta Vulgaris by Margie Sarsfield. That will be coming out February 11th from W.W. Norton. Moving on to Sick Houses, Haunted Homes and the Architecture of Dread by Leila Taylor. This will be coming out February 11th. From family homes in Amityville to gothic mansions in Los Angeles and the Unabomber's cabin, houses often capture and contain the horror that has happened within them. Sick Houses crosses the threshold of these eerie spaces to explore how different types of architecture become vessels for terror, and how these spaces, meant to shelter us, instead become the source of our deepest fears. Using film, television, and literature to explain why we are drawn to haunted and haunting places. There are so many reasons I am looking forward to Sick Houses. I mentioned it on an episode of the Talking Scared podcast I was on recently as one of my most anticipated releases. Throughout the run of this podcast, it has been a well-documented fact that I love haunted houses and the haunted house subgenre. And very recently, I've fallen into the history architecture side of YouTube, which has been fascinating. So listen, this book was made for me and I am extremely excited about it. That is Sick Houses, Haunted Homes, and the Architecture of Dread by Leila Taylor. That will be coming out February 11th. And on February 18th, we have Birthday Party Demon to look forward to. This is by Wendy Dalrymple from Mad Axe Media. BFFs, Tina, Eve, and Lacey come together for a sweet 16 slumber party that goes sideways when they accidentally summon more than a good time. After Lacey becomes possessed and traps her friends in a fashion catalog, Tina and Eve must find their way out of a totally fabulous new world before the demon overtakes Lacey's body completely. First of all, this sounds ridiculously fun. The comps for this are The Craft meets Jennifer's Body with a little bit of My Best Friend's Exorcism. So a great time, you know? Secondly, if I had to pick a fashion catalog to be trapped inside of as a millennial, it is going to have to be Delia's. I feel a lot of you nodding along with me, okay? You get it. Yes, it's Delia's, for me anyway. But I know, not a fashion catalog, but also an American Girl doll catalog. I feel like could be fun. Also, good horror fodder. Anyway, that is Birthday Party Demon by Wendy Dalrymple. That will be coming out February 18th. And then we have Victorian Psycho by Virginia Feito. This will be coming out February 4th. Winifred Naughty arrives at Ensor House prepared to play the perfect Victorian governess. She'll dutifully tutor her charges, Drusilla and Andrew, tell them bedtime stories, and only joke about eating children. But the longer Winifred spends within the estate's dreary confines, the more she learns of the perversions and pathetic preoccupations of the Pounds family, the more trouble she has sticking to her plan. Whether creeping across moonlit lawns in her undergarments or gently tormenting the house staff, Winifred struggles at every turn to stifle the horrid compulsions of her past. When her chillingly dark imagination breaches the feeble boundary of reality on Christmas morning, Winifred is finally ready to deliver on her generous gifts. Obviously, I'm going to need a copy of this ASAP. Everything about this sounds incredible. It's pitched as dark humor. There's a lot of simmering rage and vengeance, and also soon to be a major motion picture starring one Margaret Qualley. Okay, like, who doesn't need to read this? That is Victorian Psycho by Virginia Feito. All right, kitty cats, let's move on to March, because guess what? We have a Stephen Graham Jones book coming out, okay? Yep. March 15th, we have The Buffalo Hunter. A diary, written in 1912 by a Lutheran pastor, is discovered within a wall. What it unveils is a slow massacre, a chain of events that go back to 217 Blackfeet dead in the snow, told in transcribed interviews by a Blackfeet named Goodstab, who shares the narrative of his peculiar life over a series of confessional visits. This is an American Indian revenge story. I can't even begin to tell you how excited I am for this book ever since Stephen Graham Jones said he was working on a vampire story, and then we learned it was going to be what seems this epic historical novel on top of that, and it looks like it's kind of in the style of Interview with the Vampire, just yes on top of yes on top of yes. You know, like, I need this book now. Anyway, sorry. That is The Buffalo Hunter by Stephen Graham Jones. That will be coming out March 15th. Moving on to The Thorns by Dawn Kurtagich. Touch a line, you break your spine. Stacy is the dusty air, the cracked soil, the drought. To 13-year-old Bethany Sloan, she's everything. Abandoned by her mother at a remote African boarding school, Bethany will do anything to stay in Stacy's good graces. And that means learning the rules of each twisted game. Touch a crack, you break your back. Years later, Bethany is a best-selling author, disabled now. She can't remember what happened back in the bush, but there's no mistaking Stacy Preston's name in her inbox. Glassy, cut my RC. That email brings Bethany's childhood rushing back. The Glass Man was just a story the Thorns invented, a game of wits. But every game has its rules and consequences for breaking them. To stay alive this round, Bethany needs to play right into Stacy's hands. Listen, I am always going to be here for a obsessive, toxic friendship story. I love them. I eat them up. But there's a lot of layers to this that I like. I kind of like the childhood friend reaching back out, but also maybe there was something to this sinister game they were playing, and this figure who, I don't know, like maybe could be real, is haunting them. I'm not sure, but you know what? I want to find out. I want to find out. And that is The Thorns by Dawn Kurtagich. That'll be coming out March 4th from Thomas and Mercer. And also coming out March 4th, we have The Unworthy by Agustina Bazterrica. In the house of the Sacred Sisterhood, the unworthy live in fear of the superior sister's whip. Seething with resentment, they plot against each other and await who will ascend to the level of the enlightened, and who will suffer the next exemplary punishment. Risking her life, one of the unworthy keeps a diary in secret. Slowly, memories surface from a time before the world collapsed, before the Sacred Sisterhood became the only refuge. Then, Lucia arrives. She, too, is unworthy. But she is different, and her arrival brings a single spark of hope to a world of darkness. Obviously, I'm here for this, but I'm going to be honest, I don't know what to expect. I loved Tender as the Flesh, but it had me shook. You know, when I finished that book, I had to stare at the wall and ponder what I was going to do with myself. So, like, I don't know what Agustina Bazterrica is bringing with this. I am scared but excited. I've heard good things from people who have read this. I have not delved into a lot of non-horror books. I mean, I guess I watched Immaculate and The First Omen, but like outside of that, I will admit a bit of a genre blind spot for me. But this is a highly anticipated book for me, and that is The Unworthy by Agustina Bazterrica. This will be coming out March 4th. And on March 25th, from Poisoned Pen Press, we have Blood on Her Tongue by Johanna van Veen. The Netherlands, 1887. Lucy's twin sister Sarah is unwell. She refuses to eat, mumbles nonsensically, and is increasingly obsessed with a centuries-old corpse recently discovered on her husband's grand estate. The doctor has diagnosed her with temporary insanity caused by a fever of the brain. To protect her twin from a terrible fate in a lunatic asylum, Lucy must unravel the mystery surrounding her sister's condition. But it's clear her twin is hiding something. Then again, Lucy is harboring secrets of her own too. Lucy soon comes to suspect that something is trying to possess her beloved sister. Or is it madness? As Sarah changes before her very eyes, Lucy must reckon with the dark, monstrous truth, or risk losing her forever. Then, the worst happens. Sarah's behavior takes a turn for the strange. She becomes angry and hungry. I'm in your blood, and you are in mine. I loved My Darling Dreadful Thing by Johanna van Veen. So when I saw she had another book coming out this year, and then I read the synopsis, of course it jumped right onto my most anticipated reads list. And from the people that have already read it, I've heard great things. So very excited for Blood on Her Tongue by Johanna van Veen. That will be coming out March 25th from Poisoned Pen Press. And moving on to The Haunting of Room 904 by Erica T. Worth. Olivia Becente was never supposed to have the gift. The ability to commune with the dead was the specialty of her sister, Nechi. But when Nechi dies unexpectedly and under strange circumstances, somehow Olivia suddenly can't stop seeing and hearing from spirits. A few years later, she's the most in-demand paranormal investigator in Denver. She's good at her job. But the loss of Nechi haunts her. That's when she hears from the Brown Palace, a landmark Denver hotel. The owner can't explain it, but every few years, a girl is found dead in room 904, no matter what room she checked into the night before. As Olivia tries to understand these disturbing deaths, the past and the present collide as Olivia's investigation forces her to confront a mysterious and possibly dangerous cult, a vindictive journalist, betrayal by her friends, and shocking revelations about her sister's life. We love a professional woman in the paranormal field, but I also really like stories about characters with supernatural abilities of some kind. This sounds really interesting. I feel like I'm gonna have to make a Shining comparison because we're talking about like a cursed hotel in Colorado. Like I feel like it's gonna be there. I'm very excited about this though. I kind of love stories about investigators who start, investigating a specific case and it seems to hit too close to home. They stumble upon something that is much bigger than they thought and also somehow connected to their own past. So love that. This is The Haunting of Room 904 by Erica T. Worth. And coming out March 11th, we have Vanishing Daughters by Cynthia Pelayo. This is coming from Thomas and Mercer. It started the night journalist Briar Thorn's mother died in their rambling old mansion on Chicago's South Side. The nightmares of a woman in white pleading to come home, music switched on in locked rooms, and the panicked fear of being swallowed by the dark. Bree has almost convinced herself that these stirrings of dread are simply manifestations of grief and not the beyond world of ghostly impossibilities her mother believed in. And more tangible terrors still lurk outside the decaying Victorian Greystone. A serial killer has claimed the lives of 51 women in the Chicago area. When Bree starts researching the murders, she meets a stranger who tells her there's more to her sleepless nights than bad dreams. They hold the key to putting ghosts to rest and stopping a killer. But the killer has caught on and is closing in. If Bree doesn't answer the call of the dead soon, she'll be walking among them. I am always going to be excited by a new Cynthia Pelayo novel. I really love the way she blends supernatural with procedural elements, and her stories always have a really strong sense of place. They're all very Chicago-centric, and I love that. So that is Vanishing Daughters by Cynthia Pelayo. That'll be coming out March 11th from Thomas and Mercer. And coming out March 18th from Shortwave, we have Night of the Witch Hunter by Patrick Barb. It's 1999, and Fallen Church, New Hampshire is ready for Y2K, but they never planned for Goodman Price. As the new millennium approaches, outcast teen Josie's school video project for history class inadvertently leads to the resurrection of Price, a demonic witch hunter from the 1600s. As he unleashes puritanical hell on earth in her small New England town, Josie must rely on her best friend, an ancestor accused of witchcraft, and the mystical powers inside herself to put an end to the Night of the Witch Hunter once and for all. All of the books that I've read in the Shortwave Killer VHS series have been amazing. A total blast. So looking forward to this one as a part of that series. I'm still trying to get over, it's not just this, it's a recent trend of Y2K being a period piece. And I know it was 25 years ago, but that's still hard to accept. But this sounds so fun and I'm looking forward to it. That is Night of the Witch Hunter by Patrick Barb. And coming out March 18th from Tor, we have White Line Fever by Casey Jones. At a passing glance, County Road 951 is an entirely unremarkable stretch of blacktop, a 2-lane scar across the Cascade foothills of Central Oregon. But the road is known by another name, coined by those who have had to clean up after all those scenic detours went horribly wrong: the Devil's Driveway. When Livia and her longtime friends take the driveway as a shortcut to a much-needed weekend getaway, what begins as a morning joyride quickly becomes anything but. Soon, They're driving for their lives, pursued by a horror behind anything they have ever imagined. The Devil's Driveway might be only 15 miles long, but with danger at every turn, it will take the four women to the very limits of their friendships and their sanity. And there's no telling what else lies in wait, just beyond the bend. This sounds so tense and stressful in the best way. I love a road trip horror thriller. I love a girls' trip gone wrong, and we're not even getting to the girls' trip of it all, it sounds like. Looking forward to that. That is White Line Fever by Casey Jones, coming out March 18th from Tor. And before heading into April, I wanted to quickly shout out the Punk Goes Horror anthology, edited by William Sterling. That is a play on those like Pop Goes Punk albums, if you remember those. But each short story is a song, which is really exciting, kind of like an album. And it's got authors like Liz Caron and Rachel Harrison and Brian McCauley. So that seems like it will be really fun. And that's also coming out in March. Now moving on to April, and why don't we start off with Nat Cassidy's When the Wolf Comes Home. That's coming out April 22nd from Tor Nightfire. One night, Jess, a struggling actress, finds a 5-year-old runaway hiding in the bushes outside her apartment. After a violent, bloody encounter with the boy's father, she and the boy find themselves running for their lives. As they attempt to evade the boy's increasingly desperate father, Jess slowly comes to a horrifying understanding of the butchery that follows them. The boy can turn his every fear into reality, and when the wolf finally comes home, no one will be spared. It's so good to have a new Nat Cassidy book to look forward to. I am so excited about this. I have heard nothing but raving praise for this book. And I mean, what better genre to explore things like fear and paternal relationships? Very much looking forward to that. That is When the Wolf Comes Home by Nat Cassidy. That will be coming out April 22nd from Tor Nightfire. And coming out April 8th from Poisoned Pen Press, we have What Remains of Teague House by Stacey Johns. When the Rollins family matriarch unexpectedly passes, all 3 adult children rush home. What they find is a house bursting with grief and, unexpectedly, multiple bodies buried in their woods. One grave dug just this past week. Is Robbie, who's hidden multiple affairs and lives as a freeloader on their property, somehow involved in this most recent murder? Is his sister, Sandra, experiencing false memories of her late father digging near where the old bodies are found? Why is Aunt Phil in such a rush to leave town after her late sister's funeral? Enter Detective Maddie Reed, who has her own reasons for being curious about the bodies buried behind Teague House. Maddie sets out to unmask a killer, one Maddie may have been hunting all her life. Listen, just from that, so much here I am excited for. I love a dysfunctional family. I love messiness. I love a murder mystery. I love the killer might be one of us, but it also might be one of our late parents. And what does that say about legacies and people's relationship to legacies and family ties and how far you're willing to go for the ones you love? Very much looking forward to this. That is What Remains of Teague House by Stacey Johns. That'll be coming out April 8th from Poisoned Pen Press. And coming out April 1st from Zando, we have Freak's Law by Jane Flett. It is the summer of 97, and the repressed Scottish town of Pitlaw is itching for a change. Enter the Freak's Law, a traveling carnival of deviant queers and architects of mayhem. There's Gloria, fortune teller and worm charmer, her daughter Nancy, a contortionist witch, big-hearted tightrope walker werewolf Louie, not to mention illusionists and conjoined twins Cass and Henry, and tattooed human pincushion Pingal. Against Pitlaw's miserable gray landscape, the carnival shines electric and bright, and it doesn't take long for the town's teenagers to be seduced by its neon charms and the possibility of escape. But beneath it all, these newcomers are harboring a darker desire: revenge. Revenge for being cast out, never allowed to settle, punished for purely existing. And as tensions reach fever pitch between the stoic, unwelcoming locals and the dazzling intruders, a violence that has been bubbling for centuries is about to be unleashed. Everything about this is striking. The title, the cover. There's a blurb from Chelsea G. Summers calling it a glittery and crackling horror debut. There are comparisons to Geek Love and Angela Carter's Night of the Circus. Okay, like I need this. I know I've said that so many times, but I truly do. This sounds incredible. I am very excited for this. This is Freak's Law, coming out April 1st by Jane Flett. And coming out April 8th from Tor Nightfire, we have Cold Eternity by S.A. Barnes. Haley is on the run from an interplanetary political scandal that has put a huge target on her back. She heads for what seems like the perfect place to lay low: a gigantic space barge storing the cryogenically frozen bodies of Earth's most fortunate citizens from more than a century ago. The cryo program, created by trillionaire tech genius Zale Winfield, is long defunct, and the AI hologram ghosts, ghoulishly created in the likeness of Winfield's 3 adult children, are glitchy. The ship feels like a crypt, and the isolation gets to Haley almost immediately. She starts to see figures crawling in the hallway, and there's a constant scraping, slithering, and rattling echoing in the vents. It's not long before Haley realizes she may have gotten herself trapped in an even more dangerous situation than the one she was running from. I love that S.A. Barnes has become my new go-to space horror author. I am very excited for this. It seems like a lot of fun, right? It's giving Alien Romulus, maybe Passengers. I don't know. I say that as someone who didn't see Passengers because I hate the crispy rat. I also feel like if I was a protagonist in this situation, that is exactly what would happen to me. Like, I'm on the run. The one place I choose to lay low and stay safe is an abandoned space barge, which of course seems like it's haunted by some type of supernatural evil. And of course I'm going to meet my demise because of decisions made by a trillionaire tech bro who's been long dead. Because of course that's how it happens. Anyway, that is Cold Eternity by S.A. Barnes. That will be coming out April 8th from Tor Nightfire. And on April 25th from Tor, we have Eat the Ones You Love by Sarah Maria Griffin. During a grocery run to her local shopping center, Shelley Pine, sees a help needed sign in the flower shop window and decides that she can be exactly the help the florist needs. She's recently left her fiance and lost her job and moved to her parents' house during this strange, dull thick of the pandemic. She needs something good. Flowers are good, she decides. As is Nev, the beautiful florist who wrote the sign asking for help. However, an orchid growing nearby is watching her closely. His name is Baby, and Nev, who runs the little flower shop, belongs to him. He's young. He's hungry, and he'll do just about anything to make sure he can keep growing big and strong. Nothing he eats, nobody he eats, can satisfy the thing he most desires. Nev, she, who has tended to him since he was a seedling, or something resembling a seedling at least. He adores her and wants to consume her, and he thinks Shelley can help him. There are so many things I love about this. I mean, the title, the cover, the premise. It's giving Little Shop of Horrors. It's giving cannibalism as a metaphor for love. And you know what? I already hear you. I already hear the grumbling. It's not technically cannibalism because it's a plant. And I say, shush. Shush. I don't need this right now. I said, The cannibalism girlies are getting fed in 2025. Okay, there's this, there's the lamb, there's a new season of Yellow Jackets. Just let them have this, okay? You know it. That is Eat the Ones You Love. That'll be coming out April 25th. On April 15th from Minotaur, we have Another Fine Mess by Lindy Ryan. Making sure dead things stay buried is the family business. For over 100 years, the Evans women have kept the undead in their strange southeast Texas town from rising. But sometimes the dead rise too quick, and that's what left Lenore Evans and her granddaughter Luna burying Luna's mother Grace and Lenore's mother Ducey. Now, the only two women left in the Evans family, Luna and Lenore, are left rudderless in the wake of the most god-awful mess to date. But when the full moon finds another victim, it's clear their trouble is far from over. Now, Lenore, Luna, and the new sheriff, their biggest ally, must dig deep down into the family lore to discover what threatens everything they love most. The body count ticks up. The most unexpected dead will rise, forcing Lenore and Luna to face the possibility that the undead aren't the only monsters preying on their small town. This sounds so fun, and I know I've heard nothing but good things about Lindy Ryan's books. They really do seem like they scratch like a very particular itch. And this book also sounds like it would be perfect for the small town horror reading prompt in the 2025 Books in the Freezer reading challenge, maybe? That is Another Fine Mess by Lindy Ryan, coming out April 15th. On April 29th, we have Bat Eater and Other Names for Cora Zhang by Kylie Lee Baker. Cora Zhang is a crime scene cleaner, washing away the remains of brutal murders and suicides in Chinatown. But none of that seems so terrible when she's already witnessed the most horrific thing possible: her sister, Leila, being pushed in front of a train. Before fleeing the scene, the murderer shouted 2 words: Bat Eater. So, the bloody messes don't really bother Cora. She's more bothered by the germs on the subway railing, the bare hands of a stranger, the hidden viruses in every corner, and the bite marks on her coffee table. Of course, ever since Delilah was killed in front of her, Cora can't be sure what's real and what's in her head. She pushes away all feelings and ignores the advice of her aunt to prepare for the Hungry Ghost Festival when the gates of hell open. But she can't ignore the dread in her stomach as she keeps finding bat carcasses at crime scenes, or the scary fact that all her recent cleanups have been the bodies of East Asian women. As Cora will soon learn, you can't just ignore hungry ghosts. This is one of my most anticipated reads of at least this half of the year. I am so excited to read it. I just got a copy of this to review a few days ago. I think the crime scene cleaning aspect is really fascinating, but I also enjoy stories of characters being forced to face and reckon with things, emotions, traumas that they have repressed. And in this case, it looks like a supernatural force is forcing that. So I'm very excited about that. I believe this is a debut, but I'm not 100% sure about that. But looking forward to this. That is Bat Eater and Other Names for Cora Zhang. That'll be coming out April 29th. And also on April 29th, we have Saint Catherine by Anna Meyer. And this is a relatable adult graphic novel about a woman who skips Sunday Mass for the first time in her life, only to discover she's possibly being possessed by a demon. As a recovering Irish-American Catholic, she has mostly traded the world of communion and confessionals for the city girl's struggle of work-life balance, family, and her relationships. The only thing she has not been able to shake is her fear that something bad will happen if she misses Sunday Mass. But her fears become a reality when she skips Mass for the first time and discovers she is now being possessed by a demon claiming to be the Prince of Hell. As she takes matters into her own hands and attempts to exorcise these demons, both the paranormal and emotional kind, Catherine must face her buried guilt and what it truly means to be good. Of course, we got to have something for the religious trauma crowd. And, in the words of Martina McBride, this one's for all you girls about 25. Okay. I love this as a concept. I literally just said this about Bat Eater. I love characters being forced to confront things. And it sounds like figuring out what your life looks like in your 20s. For anxious people, I do love the idea that you have this one really irrational fear that rules your life, and like, let's explore what happens if that fear comes true. Because one part of me is like, of course that would happen. Of course, the one really irrational fear I have would be accurate. That is St. Catherine by Anna Meyer. Look for that around April 29th. And before we head into May, wanted to shout out that on April 27th, Todd Kiesling's The Sundowners Dance will be coming out from Shortwave, and this is about an elderly widower who relocates to a retirement community and discovers his neighbors are worshiping a meteorite. Looking at the comps here, looking like a little bit of Cocoon, a little bit of Color Out of Space. Looking forward to it. Again, that is The Sundowners Dance. That will be coming out April 22nd from Shortwave. And moving into May, which, as we all know, is the best month of the year. That's what I've heard. I'm just repeating what people are saying, and everyone is saying it. Starting off with Below the Grand Hotel by Kat Scully. This will be coming out May 6th from Clash. Mabel Rose Dixon will do anything to become a Ziegfeld girl, including picking the pockets of the wealthy New York City elite to fund her way to stardom. When she picks the wrong pocket, Mabel loses her soul to a hotel run by demons and tumbles into the world of the Grand Hotel, a place where any artist can make it big. Mabel's greatest wish to be famous is granted. Every night she performs as the starring act to a crowded theater and finds she is never without patrons. But Mabel quickly learns that losing her soul to get everything she ever wanted comes at a much steeper cost than what she bargained for. She must steal her soul back before the Grand's annual May's Eve ball, or become a demon herself forever. This is being described as The Great Gatsby meets Hellraiser, which of course immediately caught my attention, as did the Art Deco design of the cover. I am looking forward to this. I kind of want to know, what is the downside to being like a Cenobite pop star hotel singer? I want to know. Very interested in this. It looks really fun. That is Below the Grand Hotel by Kat Scully. And coming out May 25th from Gallery, we have Feeders by Matt Serafini. When a video depicting the brutal murder of a former classmate leaks online, Kylie Bennington's, whose dreams of becoming a successful influencer remain frustratingly elusive, curiosity gets the better of her, leading to the discovery of an off-the-grid social media app called Monolife. As it turns out, there are certain cryptic rules in the user agreement that must be adhered to, such as interacting with other users at least twice daily or risk losing it all, and never, ever speaking of Monolife's existence to the non-user or risk dire consequences. For this is a platform that primarily rewards the worst in human behavior, and which begins chipping away at Kylie's sanity across post after post for an ever-increasing audience of immoral fans. Now, Kylie's going to find out just how far she's willing to go on her unyielding rise to the top, even if that means coming face to face with the frightening and ruthless forces behind Monolife, who see all from deep within the shadows. I'm inventing a fan theory out of nothing that the evil forces that are behind this Monolife site are the same ones who created that participation rule in online classes where you have to comment on other people's posts. Like, tell me you've had an online class and you've had to do that, right? Comment things like, yes, David, I read this section and I agree with your point, because you're trying to hit a word count anyway. Moving on from that, though, I do love internet and social media horror, so I'm very excited about this. I don't have to stretch my imagination too far to imagine a social media site that rewards the worst of humanity. I'm sure all of us can wrap our brains around that. But I've heard really good things, and I'm looking forward to that. That is Feeders by Matt Serafini. That'll be coming out May 25th. And on May 6th, from Soho Press, we have The Butcher's Daughter, the hitherto untold story of Mrs. Lovett by David Demchuk and Corinne Lee Clark. London, 1887. At the abandoned apartment of a missing young woman, a dossier of evidence is collected, ordered chronologically, and sent to the Chief Inspector of the London Metropolitan Police. It contains a frightening correspondence between an inquisitive journalist, Miss Emily Gibson, and the woman Miss Gibson thinks may be the infamous Mrs. Lovett, Sweeney Todd's accomplice, a wicked woman who baked men into pies and sold them in her pie shop on Fleet Street. The talk of London town, even decades after her horrendous misdeeds. As the woman relays the harrowing account of her life, from her upbringing on Butcher's Row in the unruly streets of Victorian London, to her daring escape from a mad doctor, her missives unlock an intricate mystery that brings Miss Gibson closer to the truth, even as that truth may cost her everything. Listen, if you were to ask me which fictional character I thought could use a wicked style treatment, I don't know that I would have thought of Mrs. Lovett. But let me tell you, I am here for this, right? I want to know Mrs. Lovett's story. And I'm telling you, another one for the cannibalism girlies, okay? This is coming out May 6th. That is The Butcher's Daughter, the hitherto untold story of Mrs. Lovett by David Demchuk and Corinne Lee Clark. Wake up, babe. We've got a new Mira Grant novel coming out this year. Yeah, May 6th, we have Overgrowth by Mira Grant from Tor Nightfire. This is just a story. It can't hurt you anymore. Since she was 3 years old, Anastasia Miller has been telling anyone who would listen that she's an alien disguised as a human being, and that the armada that left her on Earth is coming for her. And since she was 3 years old, no one has believed her. Now, with an alien signal from the stars being broadcast around the world, humanity is finally starting to realize that it's already been warned, and it may be too late. The invasion is coming. Stasia's biological family is on the way to bring her home, and very few family reunions are willing to cross the gulf of space for just one misplaced child. What happens when you know what's coming and just refuse to listen? I am so excited for this. This is being pitched as Invasion of the Body Snatchers meets Day of the Triffids. It's body horror, alien invasion, apocalypse. I'm ready. I'm here for that. I am ready for Mira Grant to take us on that journey. That is Overgrowth by Mira Grant. That'll be coming out May 6th. And on May 13th from Dutton, we have Immaculate Conception by Ling Ling Huang. Enka meets Mathilde in art school. Mathilde is a dizzyingly talented yet tortured artist whose star is on the rise. And Enka, struggling to make art that feels original, is immediately drawn to her. The two strike up an intense bond that soon turns codependent. But when Mathilde's fame reaches new heights, Enka becomes desperate to keep her best friend close, no matter the cost. Enka quickly falls in love with and marries a billionaire whose family company is funding an unconventional technology purported to heighten empathy, which could allow someone else to inhabit Mathilde's mind and absorb the trauma from her brain. Soon, the boundaries between Mathilde and Enka begin to blur even further, setting in motion a disturbing series of events that forever changes their lives. As a huge fan of Ling Ling Huang's natural beauty, I cannot wait for this. And you're telling me it's a story about like a too close friendship where lines are blurred and maybe we get into like with this technology kind of parasocial territory. I am extremely excited for this. That is Immaculate Conception by Ling Ling Huang. And on May 20th, from Harper Voyager, we have Starving Saints by Caitlin Starling. Amar Castle has been under siege for 6 months. Food is running low and there has been no sign of rescue. But just as the survivors consider deliberately thinning their numbers, the castle stores are replenished, the sick are healed, and the divine figures of the Constant Lady and her saints have arrived, despite the barricaded gates, offering succor in return for adoration. Soon, the entire class is under the sway of their saviors, partaking in intoxicating feasts of terrible origin, while the war hero, Servoin, gives her allegiance to the Constant Lady. Phocine, a disorganized, paranoid nun turned sorceress, races to unravel the mystery of these new visitors and exonerate her experiments as their source. And in the bowels of the castle, a serving girl, Trela, is torn between her thirst for secret vengeance against Voin and the desperate need to escape from the horrors that are unfolding within Amar's walls. As the castle descends into bacchanalian madness, forgetting the massive army beyond its walls in favor of hedonistic ecstasy, these 3 women are the only ones who still see their situation for what it is. But they are not immune from the temptations of the castle's new masters, or each other, and their shifting alliances and entangled pasts bring violence to the surface. To save the castle and themselves will take a reimagining of who they are and a reorganization of the very world itself. Okay. There's a lot going on here. And I will say, I don't read a lot of medieval horror or medieval stories in general, but I do really like Caitlin Starling. And I love this idea of 3 characters who kind of see the con. Okay, like see beyond what is happening and see things for what they really are. So I am very excited about that. That is Starving Saints by Caitlin Starling. And let's move into June with I Can Fix Her by Ray Wilde, which will be coming out June 3rd from Clash. Johnny spots her ex, Alice, at the local cafe with a vague sense that she's been there before. Though she's still angry about their breakup and Alice's subsequent ghosting, Johnny can't resist the draw of a second shot at their relationship and accepts Alice's invitation back to her apartment. Once there, promises are exchanged, there's talk of wonder and change and dreams made real. But after spending the night together, they face a morning in which Alice is still Alice, Johnny is still Johnny, and the dog has doubled in size. Over the course of a week, increasingly bizarre changes in the world around them force Johnny to consider whether the pair can change just as easily, if they can change at all, or if both her relationship and the bounds of reality are destined to implode. This sounds like it would be a perfect pick for the book with a queer protagonist prompt. I do. I love messy relationships and I love books that play with reality. Like reality keeps changing. And that sounds like what is going on here, which sounds like, I don't want to say a good time, but a fun time. That is I Can Fix Her by Ray Wilde. That'll be coming out from Clash on June 3rd. And then we've got Strange Houses by Ugetsu. This is translated by Jim Ryan. A writer fascinated by the macabre is approached by an acquaintance who is considering purchasing a second-hand house in Tokyo. With its bright and spacious interior, the home seems perfect. But looking closer, the building's floor plan reveals a mysterious dead space hidden between the walls. Seeking a second opinion, the writer shares the floor plan with an architect, only to discover more strange spaces dotted around the house. What are these mysterious strange spaces? And why do they exist? Are they really there? Or is there something off with the floor plan? And who's the home's former resident who suddenly disappeared? The freelance writer and his architect friend can't resist the challenge of solving the riddle of these. I know it's a horror staple. You know what I love? It's a weird house that doesn't make sense. I did not read Strange Pictures, which is Ugetsu's novel before this, but it has been recommended to me, so I am very excited to get into it. And the way it's being talked about, it's kind of, can you solve the mystery of this floor plan? So does it have an interactive element? I don't know. I'm very curious about this one. That is Strange Houses by Ugetsu. And ending things with Foreclosure Gothic by Harris Lati. This is coming out June 10th from Astra House. Foreclosure Gothic reimagines the American Gothic against the backdrop of today's Hudson Valley. The story tells of ex-Hollywood actor Vic Greener as he falls in love with the elusive Heather Roswell, and the couple, following the footsteps of Vic's father, resolves to make a life restoring one foreclosed home after another. Then comes the uncanny, destabling arrival of new tenants in their duplex, and the Greeners' shocking discovery upon their departure. With evocative and unsettling black and white photos throughout, this debut novel is at once a skewed portrait of 3 generations of Greener men, an intimate look at both childhood and parenthood, and an examination of the friction between chasing one's dream and working to make money. The cover of this really caught my eye, and I am very interested in a multi-generational story really looking at the American dream and dashed hopes. And I'm just very interested in getting to know these characters. It sounds like it's going to be a very character-driven story, probably a little on the slower side, which I'm okay with, but I think sometimes you just need to know that going in. So very excited about that. That is Foreclosure Gothic by Harris Lati. And those are the books I am looking forward to in at least the first chunk of the year, January through June. I'm sure there's stuff I've missed, as is bound to happen, and especially as the year goes on and more books get announced, so this isn't a list that encompasses everything that is being released. Say thank you for listening. Thank you for all that were patient with the audio issues on the previous episode. I was so looking forward to releasing that episode, and know that I cried when I started editing it because it sounded bad. So thank you for those of you that pushed through and listened anyway. I am so sorry, and I'm hoping that that never happens again. Fingers crossed. I hate technology sometimes. But thank you so much for listening. I have been your host, Stephanie Ganya, and here's to another year of reading horror. And see you next time on Books in the Freezer.